looks like we have a number of people here tonight. Are there any announcements that anybody has to make? Okay. Wow.
I'm sorry, I don't have an announcement, but I have a question. Should I be seeing something?
You should be seeing it. We're ugly, so you don't want to see it.
That I don't know.
We're going to see if you can see the agenda very soon, okay, Andy?
You can hear us, correct?
I can hear you, but I'm not getting any visual either of participants or of documents. I'm seeing a visual that says council chambers and just has some lines on it.
Okay. I think they're trying to resolve this now.
Okay.
Should I hold the meeting until it's resolved or keep going? Okay, we'll keep going just for time's sake because it's going to be a long one. Okay, are there any announcements? I'll go back to my original question. Okay, no announcements. Public appearances. Do we have somebody? Okay. You want to step forward to the mic? Up. That's.
Andy, can you see anything now? Where'd he go?
Yes, I can. We're good. I see the agenda.
Okay, great.
Hello. My name is Dulce Preciado. I am a staff library specialist at Roseland Community Library. And I am here today to come to speak to you about the Roseland Library, as I know you will discuss it later in your closed session. I am speaking on behalf of all the children, parents, and many other patrons that we serve at the Roseland Library. I have a few items that I would like for you to consider as you discuss Roseland and the budget. Currently, the building where the Roseland Library is located, unfortunately, is decaying in infrastructure. I understand that the search for a new building is currently in process, but I do ask that you keep in mind that for the new building, you keep in mind these bullet points. First, I ask you that the new building should have air conditioner and a heating system. Those are basic needs that any public building should have, and we currently don't have that. Also, we need greater pest control. I understand many public buildings suffer from pest control, but we have rodents such as mice and cockroaches roaming around books in front of patrons. That is not safe. Also, I ask that more is invested for outreach to the community to foment adult and children programs. A very specific thing that needs to be understood about Roseland is that a lot of our patrons are new to the library, new to a library system, and it's the first time they get a library card. So we want them to feel welcome. We want them to feel empowered to use this public building that they are paying with their taxes to empower themselves to use the resources. Also, we need computers. We currently only have laptops, and we need greater cleaning staff when hopefully we do get a new building. And hopefully we also, or you consider in the budget that Roseland should be open for more hours. Unfortunately, we have to close very early at 2 p.m. because we do share the space with the Boys and Girls Club, and we do not get the after-school crowd. And we cannot serve those patrons. And for the moms and dads that work in construction, work in agriculture, that get out of work very late or very tired because those are hard labor jobs, they cannot come. So If any of you have ever lived in the Roseland community or have spent time there or have not, I cordially invite you to come, visit the library, spend some time there, talk to the staff, talk to the patrons, and when discussing the budget for next year, keep that in mind. If we're gonna be open more hours, we will need more staff, we will need full-time staff. So I just wanted to say that, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other public comments? Looks like Tom's going.
Hi, my name is Tom Popenook, and well, it's a long way down. I'm a senior building mechanic for the Sonoma County Library System. I also have another responsibility, which is I am elected by SEIU to represent workers in Marin, Sonoma, Mendocino, and Del Norte County as the regional vice president. The reason I say that is because I serve on a board, and I know how important it is that as a board member that I trust my leadership, my staff, the staff that's the senior staff for the union, and I look to them for guidance. So I understand your position, and I understand, serving in that position myself, how important it is to be able to have that sense that the information you get, you can trust. I also know that, unfortunately, I've found the senior staff, whether it is in a library or in a union, tend to be somewhat isolated from the reality of a situation. Dolce basically expanded upon that very well in saying, we have all these problems at this library, but senior staff honestly probably doesn't know about that. And they may dispute that, but I would say that those are the kind of things that just don't connect. And really all I want to say to you is that since we are here and we're in negotiations, what I would really encourage you to do is to make sure that when you go to your libraries, you talk to your line staff. Your director would say, or said at our staff day, like everybody has a library story. Well, those stories aren't about a building mechanic or a director. Those stories are about the people that work in a library every day that help somebody else with a problem or with a computer or search for a book for them. And those are the people that make libraries the bedrock of civilization. So I would ask you to connect with those people, talk to those people, and find out really what's going on in your libraries. I'm not saying there's bad things going on. I'm just saying just connect, and I'd appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Brianna Herod, and I, first of all, would like to support what Dulce and Tom said, because it really is, we all have our story of the library, and I'll tell you mine. My name is Brianna Herod. I'm a part-time library specialist at the Healdsburg Library and an extra help substitute at various branches throughout the system to make my hours closer to full-time. I have worked for the Sonoma County Library for almost 1.5 years, which, if you know the staff here, that is a very short amount of time compared to a lot of our staff. After various careers, getting a job at the library feels like a dream. I look forward to a long career with the Sonoma County Library. Like many others, I have always believed in libraries. However, since working for the library, I now know the impact libraries have on so many that do not have access to resources, technology, or even just a warm, dry place in the winter. Hopefully, the Commission realizes how much the staff are dedicated to the Sonoma County Library and how much goes into providing the resources for the community when they are negotiating our contract. I would like to suggest that the Commission review the Commission meeting time and day to accommodate the libraries being open on Mondays so that staff could attend the commission meetings if they want to. It is important for SEL staff to have access to the commission. Thank you.
Thank you. We're waiting on somebody else, running up the stairs.
Yeah.
I know.
Good evening. My name is Nancy Chimino, and I've been here now since 1989 is when I was hired. So we're looking at about 28 years. Staff has their stories, and my story is that I started out as a library specialist at the Sebastopol Library. I was there for 9 years, and then I was at Rincon Valley, God, I think for about 5 years. And then I work behind the scenes now at HQ, the headquarters, in the Collection Services Division. So even though I'm not a frontline staff person, I support all of our frontline staff as best I can, and I always have our patrons in mind. I just want to say to you that I believe it is imperative, it is important for you to get to know not only your local library staff, hear what they have to say, engage, find out what's going on. There's so much more to the Sonoma County Library System than what you all see. The work we do, I cannot tell you that how this staff is so dedicated. It is amazing. The people that work here, they love this library, and they want to make this the best possible library ever. And I just think we really need to honor our staff, and that includes our management, our labor, everyone. And so I just encourage you all to talk to us, reach out. I am the historian. Past commissions have contacted me for information. So please reach out to us. We want to hear from you, and we're here to tell you about us. So welcome. Good night. Thank you. Oh, I did want to say Roseland is in desperate need. I visited there recently, and I actually cleaned the bathrooms. I was there just to visit. They were having a children's program. I was appalled. I went in the bathroom, cleaned them. I donated a fan because they didn't have any. It was hot during that heat wave, and it was just, yeah. And the amount of kids and everything, I just think it's so important to staff it well. They need a children's librarian. Bye.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to speak? Okay. So that closes public appearances. We'll move on to lab appointments, and I don't believe there are any at this point in time. Is there anybody from a library advisory board, the foundation, or the Friends that wants to make any kind of presentation? Okay. We are skipping the commissioner and liaison and the committee reports tonight. So we're moving on to the consent calendar. So do I hear a motion?
I move adoption of the consent calendar.
All righty. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, Barbara moved, Tom seconded, and because of Andy being in New Jersey instead of here, we're going to have to do a person-by-person roll call, so I'll start with Randall. Is it a yay or a nay? Yes. Stephen?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Paul?
Yay.
Deborah?
Yes.
Jason?
Aye.
And Barbara?
Yes.
And myself a yay. So it was moved unanimously. We accepted the consent calendar.
Do I get a vote there?
Oh, Andy! My goodness, we're doing this for you, and I forget you. Sorry, Andy.
Chopped liver, that's all. Yes.
Okay, I apologize profusely for that one. All right.
No worries.
So that was unanimous, including Andy. So we move on to the action items by motion, and we are to the authorizing the Petaluma Refresh architectural contract.
Do we have to authorize the Hublet contract expenditure 7.2?
That's on the consent calendar, and we accept the consent calendar, then it all goes together?
Yes.
Okay, so we don't have to do anything with that, correct? Okay. Someday I'm going to learn all this, so just be patient. Maybe next July. Okay, so we're on the action items, and we are at 8.1, and it's authorizing the Petaluma Refresh architecture calendar, and Dave Tachiva and Ann Keck, I am assuming, is, oh, there's Dave. Okay.
I'm trying to find the cover sheet here.
Page 15.
Whoa, it's a big document.
Page 15.
Yeah, that's one. Well, we're here tonight to get you to authorize this contract with Nolan Tam. Our attorney has reviewed it, and basically, I'm here to answer any questions.
Hey, Cindy. Okay, Barbara. Oh, yeah, okay, since I called you first, I'll do that, and then I'll go to you, Stephen. Sorry.
Yes, Dave, I was, this is only for the very preliminary phase, most preliminary, gotten the name of it. And I was curious about some more information you might provide us with the interest or involvement of the Petaluma Friends of the Library and the Petaluma Lab. The estimated cost in this project is a huge spectrum of possible cost, and I'm wondering about meetings that might be coming up and what you know about their financial involvement, the Friends and the Petaluma Lab.
Well, we haven't had like a completely confirmed commitment by the Petaluma Friends or the lab. We do have very high interest in committing. This is the design phase. That's what this is called. And so what Nolan Tam is going to do is provide us with 3 different options, cost-wise, within this phase to, 1, fit in with the money we already have budgeted, and 2, a little more and a little more. Does that make sense?
I kind of read that. I just thought that give you an opportunity to kind of talk about.
Well, we haven't met yet because we.
Just let me add for one second. We're really fortunate to be talking with former Commissioner Tim May, who really sees this as a priority, and we know that the Friends have funds that they're interested in committing, and the lab has interest on dedicated funds, and we are aware they're going to be meeting on October 24th for further discussion about the commitment they're going to make, but we feel very positive that they'll make one, and I think will help inform the level of commitment they want to make as the planning for the project moves forward.
I do want to add, Commissioner McKenzie is right. This is only for the preliminary design phase. And one of the reasons why there's no estimated contract amounts for the remaining 3 phases of this contract is because of this very reason, that the scope of the contract has not been set, and the Nolan Tam contractors are the ones to help the library choose which options to go forward and set the path that they're going to take.
Thank you.
Stephen?
Well, I know we're at the preliminary stages. Just putting it out there for as we move further and further down the pathway on this, giving incentive for completing various stages of the project on time and on budget.
So these are not, this is not the contractor for the project. These are only the architects. Right. So once the architects provide the options for moving forward and the library decides on which option to move forward on, right, then there will be timelines. Contractors will have to be, it will have to be bid out to contractors. There will have to be timelines set. So it's such a preliminary phase right now that there's not even a timeline for that, although there is an estimated timeline in the contract for the production of the work with respect to phase one.
Right, even with respect to phase one, just building in, some sort of incentive of getting everything done on time and on the date and within the scope of whatever it is that we're authorizing by way of money, be my recommendation.
That is part of the contract. It was in their response for request for proposals that had an outline of the timing, but I'm sure that staff will work with them, because it's all kind of, there are lots of questions right now as to move forward, that it also makes it difficult to identify timeline, but I'm sure that if staff were given direction to work with the contractors and architects and ensure that they move forward in a timely basis, that'll be something that they can press on.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Yes, this is Andy. May I ask a question?
All righty, go ahead, and then we'll get you to you, Jason. Thank you.
I guess the first thing I want to ask is, what should I do when I want to ask a question? I don't see any way to raise my hand through the app. Should I just jump in like this?
Yes, that would be a good idea. Try and pick a hole, but yes.
Okay, I have two questions. And by the way, let me preface this by saying I was really impressed with the documentation provided, the request for proposal, the proposal that was submitted, and the contract. That said, my first question was that in the request for proposal, on pages 40 through 44 of the document we received, there was a very comprehensive list of specific proposed renovations. And I was wondering what the source of that extensive list was.
Hi, Andy. That list was compiled from staff at Petaluma, mainly, myself and management staff as well. We had several meetings to come up with that entire scope of work.
Well, that was great. The second question I had was in the proposal that was submitted, and this appeared on page 52 of the packet. The fee that was proposed was $84,801, but in the contract, and this appeared on page 76, I noticed that the fee was $94,291. So it had increased by almost $10,000, it looked like, between the submission and the contract. And I was just wondering what had happened.
More familiar with it than I am.
Andy, we're looking at all our documentation here, trying to get a response for you.
Sure. So I'll reference those page numbers again in the packet.
Right.
Page 52 was the proposal that was submitted. That was where the pricing originally appeared. And page 76 was the contract pricing.
Okay.
Okay, shall we go on and take Jason's question while you are searching that out?
Sure.
Would that be okay?
I see the documentation that he's looking at. I don't have the answer to that information. I was provided with the contract exhibit as being the final proposal, so that would have to be a staff question.
Okay.
Jason.
Well, Jason, why don't you ask your question?
Okay. Now I have to go back. I lost my page number. So first question is page 18, item 4.5. The library director has the authority to terminate the agreement on behalf of the library. I would add in there interim library director as well.
And that's read into the contract. That change doesn't need to be there. I mean, that the interim or acting library director is the one empowered to take actions as the library director.
So it's synonymous?
Yeah, that's implied in that language.
Okay, and then there was mention of meetings with the city of Petaluma, community meetings to get public input. What are the dates of those meetings?
Those dates haven't been established yet, as we haven't had our first meeting with them yet until, they won't meet with us until we sign the contract.
Okay, so. And who you is it just general meeting? Who are you submitting, or who are you attempting to get the community at large? Are we incorporating City of Petaluma?
City of Petaluma Public Works Department will be involved.
Will be involved,
right?
In the open discussion.
Well, they'll be invited to the meeting. I can't make them attend.
They'll be invited to the meeting. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So, Andy, the biggest difference that I see in those two numbers is their architectural services fees. I do not have a reason for the increase. There was a slight decrease in their engineering fees because they went with a local company that actually did the engineering in a previous remodel attempt. And then the other increase was in their civil engineering, which I don't know why there was an increase, but we can certainly find out once we meet with them why those costs were increased by those amounts.
That would be my request. Thanks.
Okay.
So do you want,
I just want to point out that if you look on page 52, the topo survey is supplemental 3680, and on the page 76 one, that's included in the civil engineering plus topo. So that 3680 got brought up there. It doesn't explain the total difference in it, but it's part of the calculation.
Yeah, the major difference is in architectural services. So,
okay. So I'm assuming that we need to have this contract passed as soon as possible. What are the recommendations given this disparity in amounts? Do you want to hold back approving it, Andy, or do you want to move ahead and on the condition that we can find out what that disparity is or where it's from?
Having no experience with this at all, I think my preference would be to give conditional approval and to authorize Dave and the staff to negotiate in good faith with the architectural firm, and either to their own satisfaction determine that the increases were justified, or negotiate a lower price if that seems to be warranted. But I would, it would be my preference to just authorize the team to do that. I don't know if that's possible.
So authorize him to find out what the disparity is and justify it. At the same time, do we want to approve the contract, assuming that David will act in good faith with those?
I would. I would so move.
So it's not a $94,000 contract. It's a contract based on the billing rates that were in the Exhibit B, up to an amount of $94,000.
So that is just the complete amount that it could possibly lead to. My recommendation is that the commission consider approving it subject to approval of the library director, ensuring that there was no error in calculation of the total not to exceed amount. But it wouldn't result in a definitive lump sum payment of $94,000. That's just a not to exceed figure.
Okay. So are you comfortable with that, Andy? Moving ahead?
I am.
Okay.
Yes.
So do I hear a motion?
I move that the Sonoma County Library Commission authorize the interim library director to execute the contract agreement with Noel and Tam
Second.
Subject to the discrepancy in the...
If I may, just a sec. Ken just kindly reminded me that part of the increase was that we added additional public meetings from their original proposal. We wanted to have more public meetings, like with just regular people.
Okay, not...
And they had only scheduled one,
4,000.
and we asked for 3.
Okay, 84.
The original schedule is on page 65, and they're the little starred during the design phase. They're the little starred boxes. It says stakeholder meetings.
Okay.
We added a couple more of those.
Gotcha. Do you want to just say not to exceed 94,000? Okay. All right, let's rephrase that. I move that the Sonoma County Library Commission authorize the interim library director to execute the contract agreement with Nolan Tam and not to exceed the $94,291 fee proposal.
Second.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Paul Heaven Ridge made the motion, Deborah Doyle seconded it, and we'll work through our list. I'll start with Andy so I don't forget him this time. Andy, yay or nay?
Yay.
All righty. Randall?
Yay.
Stephen?
Yay.
Tom?
Yes.
Paul?
Yay.
Deborah?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Barbara?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So unanimously passed. We accept the contract limited to the $94,200 and some odd dollars. All righty. So now we're moving into 8.2. Budget adjustment to the fiscal year 2018-19 sales tax, Measure Y budget for use of the surplus fund balance from prior years. Okay, staff report.
Well, as Ken is approaching the podium, we've been working on this item for your consideration for several months now, and I just wanted to make sure that the commission was aware that the Finance Committee has at least during 2 meetings considered these recommendations in terms of the 17-18 surplus and some uses for that, a number of uses. We provided you a lot of information and recommendations. We're happy to answer questions, and I'm sure Ken wants to make some more additional comments. Ken?
Yes, just as Susan said, and just to put a little finer point on it, I think back in June or July, the commission asked for recommendations of how to use the Measure Y surplus, and we solicited recommendations from the commission and all the management staff, and we've talked about this for 3 or 4 months at the Finance Committee meeting, and we've got it down to the attachments that you can see there. The first attachment, the budget adjustment and allocation of fund balance, is the actual detail. If these things, if you agree to these things, this will be the budget adjustment that we make for those line items, as you can see, totaling $2.8 million. What? 84. And then down below that are the proposed fund balance commitments for future capital projects that total $3.4 million. It's a total of $6.2 million, which is approximately what we project the Measure Y fund balance to be at the end of June 2018. On page 85, it gets into a little more detail with numbers attached to it, what the different capital improvements are, the materials, training and consultation, some of the services, materials handling, and the capital improvements technology fund, like we mentioned. Page 86 through quite a while. 97, I believe, is description of each of the items, a paragraph or so in description, so that should help you out. And then we were also asked, since we're asking for a little bit more money for the phase 2 of the headquarters project, a floor plan of what that's going to look like, and that's on page 98. And that's the east part of the building, because that's the only part of the building that's going to be affected by phase 2. The west side of the building is where materials management is, to give you an idea. The east side of the building is where you enter through the entrance there. So ready to take any questions, concerns, deletions, additions, anything.
Stephen?
Well, I first want to thank the Finance Committee for reviewing all this and staff and providing these recommendations. I do want to say that I would like to see some reprioritization of this and making sure that our libraries are where they need to be before we start spending money at headquarters. I mentioned at the last meeting, I'm concerned about the Roseland and where we are and wanting a timeline. While I've gotten an email and had a discussion about ongoing conversations, based upon what I've heard here tonight by the people who have come, the conditions there need to be examined, and we need to figure out what is actually going on there now in its current location. And if anything, I would like to make sure that some of the concerns are addressed, especially because we don't have a firm timeline about when we're actually going to be moving into a specific location. I want that addressed. I also don't see anything in here about increasing the hours, whether they be at the Roseland Library. I was there personally, and it's true, they close at 2. So how that falls in with the hours that are at the other libraries, I would like to know that as well. So I would like to see some prioritization of how we're going to meet the needs of our respective libraries and the constituents of those libraries, first and foremost, before we talk about additions to things happening at headquarters. Along those lines, I would like to be able to see an analysis about where we are by way of technology at each of our branches. There has been some discussion that not all of the computers are running at optimal rates. I would like an analysis about if that's true and where they should be if we're talking about adding additional computer terminals there. Second of all, I would like an analysis about the interpreters. Not all of our librarians are bilingual, and if we're going to effectively provide services across the board, regardless of English as first or second language, I'd like that considered as far as if we don't have the staff to be able to do it, what it's going to cost in order to get the proper translation. And the mental health part, I would like that beefed up as well, an analysis incommensurate with the San Francisco Public Library. There are libraries in different parts of the country that actually team up with the Department of Public Health to have social workers come in and be able to assist the staff. They don't rely on the staff and the level of training of the staff to be able to do assessments, to de-escalate, to make referrals. They actually can make phone calls and to a representative from the Department of Health to be able to come in and provide that level of service. So I'd like that to be built into this assessment. Thanks.
Okay, anybody else? Barbara?
I just thought I would make a couple of comments as chair of the Finance Committee. We did look at the numbers first, and then we got a whole lot more information and the detail, which we appreciated, and talked through a lot of this. It's my understanding that the first chunk, the capital improvements, was the staff's highest priorities, and I don't think the Finance Committee had any issues with that group, the capital improvements. That we talked about Link Plus, which is definitely a big addition to library services, and adding back to the materials budget a significant amount of money. The training and the consultation is a lot of just assistance, internal assistance, in getting us really to another level on a lot of these issues, including a survey of all the branches and the staffing of the branches and things like that to help look at efficiencies. I think when we got down into services, you can see some very high-ticket items there. Loanable hotspots, $400,000. I am told, and I understand from reading the materials and so forth, this is something that's done in a lot of the larger libraries. It's incredibly popular. It's in terms of underserved community. A lot of people, I understand, out in the West County don't get Wi-Fi, and it's a way to provide Wi-Fi out there. So the staff's recommendation on that, I had to kind of get my head around it, but I understand that it's really a really great thing to move to. Increasing the events and programming, $75,000. My only question about that, I don't know if I brought this up at the Finance Committee, but I'm still wondering where Friends of the Library, what part Friends of the Library pay when we're talking about programs in particular, and I think it's just a discussion item I'd like to carry forward because the Friends of the Library in the dark days paid for a lot of the programming that went on in the libraries. And the self-check upgrades, a lot of these machines are old and they need to be upgraded. That seems to make a lot of sense. And then I think it's important to point out that in terms of expenditures, it's roughly spending, doing a budget just to spend about half and actually to save about half. The capital improvements technology down there at the bottom, again, $500,000 additional to upgrade Petaluma, and that would make it proportionally cost about as much as, I guess, one of the other upgrades. I can't remember off the top of my head. The allowance for AMH is automated materials handling system. And this is an exciting thing that is done in a lot of different libraries. Our interim director has convinced me that we're all about materials management, and we could do it a lot more efficiently and get up to speed. So that's putting money aside for that. That's not to pay for all of it, but I think that's a great idea. And then again, the allowance for the new ILS system, which is the operating system, I understand, for the whole, basically everything the internal happens. That's very expensive. We don't have the money to pay the whole thing, but we're putting aside a big chunk of money for the future. So personally, I think it's a really kind of a in-between, nice middle ground there of spending about half and saving about half and having plans for it. When everybody else has asked their questions, I do have another idea that I'd like to run by everybody.
Okay, Tom?
I'm also on the Finance Committee, and I want to say that these things change from meeting to meeting with a lot of discussion. There's a lot of thought that went in there, as you can tell from what Barbara's saying. One of the premises are we're looking for one-time expenses. We don't want to add hours with our surplus because we want to make sure we can go ahead with that in the future years and not have to take it away once we start it. We certainly have expectations of adding hours in our next annual budget. That's a priority that the Finance Committee has, and I think the Commission has. And I'm not totally happy with everything here, but I think it's a pretty good compromise and a reasonable use of funds. It's dipping into things I don't quite understand when they talk about hot spots and things like that, but we have this tech person sitting down there that'll tell me, oh, that's the greatest thing in the world. So I'm willing to accept her word on that. Thank you.
Let's go with Paul, and then I'll.
This is a really comprehensive, good list, and when I was reading through all this, I really have seen that it fills in some of the gaps that we've been lacking over the last number of years. I do applaud the training, the professional development. I think that's really important for any organization. And I did have a question on the fundraising consultant. And I think I'm pretty clear on the issue between the Library Foundation and our system and the issues around that. And it looks like we would pay for the library consultants, and I would think that the Library Foundation would meet us halfway on that. Because it's their issue also. And so I would say if we're going to pay, if the fundraising consultant is $10,000, I think we should split the difference with the foundation. That's just my opinion. That would save some money to put in something else, okay? And hopefully we can get this straightened out this year with the foundation issue. And the other thing I wanted to add was the mobile library van, which is something I've been kind of pushing. I think it's really good. I think it solves a number of our problems in our outlying areas. But I wasn't quite sure from this description if that was going to be a bookmobile or something else, or trying to fill too many needs in one van. So I would be more interested, I don't know who brought that forward, but I'd be more interested in discussing this in more detail with whoever's pushing this forward, because I think it's really needed. It would really boost our system, and I think it's a good idea. So that's all I had to say.
Hey, Jason?
Yeah, I appreciate the comprehensive list of items that were channeled here. I especially like the mobile hotspots and the last item, which is the material handling self-check upgrade kind of kiosk, which does give access to the library outside of ordinary hours for people who may not make it during the hours that the library is open. So I think that gives a greater access, greater outreach for the library. So I'm particularly impressed with that one as well. Regarding the Roseland branch, Santa Rosa does have 4 branches in its location. I'm completely okay with $50,000 be dedicated to Roseland without knowing a permanent location. There is a Northwest, there is a Rankin Valley, there is a downtown Santa Rosa. So there's quite a bit of access into the Santa Rosa community. So I'm fine with the allocation of $50,000 to that opportunity. And I do like the list. Thank you, Finance Committee, for putting this together, and the staff as well.
Just as a follow-up to both Jason and Paul, I forgot to say, under services, the 24-hour mini branch or mobile library van. At one point in time, we were talking about doing both of these things. And now we've consolidated that to an either or. And I think because there's a lot of implications to both either or, that we are going to request a really comprehensive staff analysis of what the issues are with both of those. If, for example, under the 24-hour kiosk, we're talking about an underserved community, that's one thing. If we're talking about putting them along a transit line, that's kind of another thing. If we're talking about a van, is it a mobile tech van, which we kind of first talked about, or is it a van to go around and do story times, or is it some combination? So anyway, it's a big chunk of money. It's $250,000, and I think what we're talking about tonight is making an allocation for that, but we will have a deeper analysis and discussion before moving forward on either one of those big ones.
Okay. Anybody else?
So I said on one of the budget meetings, and it was really a great discussion. The staff was presented some really interesting ideas, and there was some robust conversation. I think that's a good description. And one of the things I think that this list importantly does is it recognizes that this library system has been going through kind of a scarcity model for the last X years, and moving out of a scarcity model and into a budget that is a little more open to, with some flexibility, is a tough thing, and so staff wants some things, and the commission wants some things, and I think that give and the take in the meetings, and the understanding about, we need to, and I come from a marketing and fundraising background, so I look at down the road when we want to pass a new tax measure, we want the people of Sonoma County to know that we have made a difference. And it's not just the flashy stuff, it's also the hardcore stuff, the language stuff, the healthcare working stuff, I mean, all of the good stuff. But we also have to do some things that really catch their attention. And this, I think, is a really good approach for the first time out, because there is a surplus, and you have to do good things with the surplus, it seems to me. I mean, save some of it, certainly, but I think that we have an opportunity to do some things that will catch the public's eye, and we want people to use the library. That's what we want. We want them to come in and use the library, and we want them to keep using the library and ask us for more stuff.
If everybody's asked their questions about this list, I have something I'd like to bring forward. The JPA requires that libraries enter into and maintain lease agreements with each facility. And the JPA also says that the commission should establish lease agreement standards in the bylaws. And under Commissioner Hauser, we have a committee going to look at the bylaws so we can, and we're looking at the leases for consistency and, again, establishing some standards in our bylaws. So that's in process. However, the library does not have leases with some of the jurisdictions at this time, and regardless of efforts, good efforts by the library to enter into leases with all the jurisdictions. So the situation we find ourselves in is the library requires the jurisdictions that have leases to live up to the terms of the lease, and the libraries that don't, the jurisdictions that don't have leases, the library is paying for major maintenance and repair. We do have a master plan, but what's going to be updated a bit. It shows it's a list of which facility is going to be updated, you know, the urgency, and so they're prioritized at probably the rate of one a year, because it's a huge staff commitment to try to do this facilities. As you can tell, we just been working on just the architectural thing for Petaluma, and then there's all the construction and everything. So one a year is all we're going to accomplish. So it's going to be a number of years until all of our branches are able to be refreshed. The JPA also says that, quote, I'm going to quote this, the library and members who own library facilities shall work together to plan for the provision and payment of capital improvements and capital repairs to facilities operated by the library, including but not limited to major repair and replacement of building structures, HVAC systems, plumbing, roofing, ADA improvements, and other structural elements of external features such as parking lots. So the JPA does tell us that we're supposed to be working with our jurisdictions to plan for the payment of these major costs. Currently, our policy is that if we have a facility, if we have a lease with a facility, we make that jurisdiction live up to the terms of the lease. And if the jurisdiction does not have a lease, the library is paying for these major costs. So that's an inequity that we are facing. And again, we're trying to work with, but we're not there yet. The text of the Measure Y ordinance says that the proceeds of the sales tax shall, among other items, be used for, quote, maintaining aging library facilities. That doesn't necessarily say refreshes. We're interpreting it to mean refreshes, but it can mean overall the maintaining of aging library facilities. So currently, when we've gone through the budget process, we have been using the funds set aside for refreshes and major expenses with libraries without leases. So based on another item I want to bring up is that with current 10-year budget projections that we're operating under show that we're going to be in a deficit position every year. It's not going to be maybe a giant deficit, and we hope that it won't be a deficit, but that's our current 10-year projections. So we aren't going to have a great big surplus like this again to talk about one-time expenditures. And that's why I'm bringing this up tonight. My suggestion would be that we take a small amount of our surplus and create a major maintenance fund to We just put the money aside. I don't have all the answers. I don't have have it specified, how this money would be spent, but we put it aside for some major expenditures that the different cities and possibly the county would be facing for their library. I talked to the director about this, and she went through the itemization of the proposed expenditure of our surplus, and she came up with $350,000. This would be accomplished by reducing the materials budget by $150,000. That still would restore $150,000 that we lost in the current budget, and it would include a 5% increase from the current year. We would reduce the automated materials handling allocation. Again, this money we're just putting aside by $150,000. And we would reduce the training and consultation services by $25,000 each and direct staff to determine the most effective approach to handle the reductions. That's $350,000. And my proposal would be, and I'll make a motion, that we would add we would adjust the surplus line items that we're talking about tonight and move $350,000 out of the items that I just went through and put it aside for major maintenance and repair of facilities outside the refreshes. So I'm going to make that motion.
Do I hear a second?
No. Is this the motion for this item?
No, second.
She is making a motion for this item to be passed with a provision that $350,000 be set aside per her suggestions. Yeah.
Out of the budget.
Out of the budget.
A surplus.
Yeah.
You got a question down there?
Should we be starting with our main thing and then amending it?
Well, the reason I wanted to bring it up is if we did the overall prove this, then we have to go back and back this money out, which is why I wanted to bring it up at this point.
Yeah, I'm going to make a comment. This is one of those places where Barbara and I sit on opposite sides of the fence. I feel like, number one, leases are an agreement. That is working together. That takes care of some of the issues. I feel like maintenance like that needs to be in the regular budget. It's not a one-time expense. So again, you guys can think about it, make your own decisions, but it is one of the places that we've been talking about for a while. And we're still friends, but we just sit on different sides of the fence on some things. So
this to me is I'm sorry.
You have your motion up.
Yes.
And is anybody seconding it?
I think we need more discussion because what specific line items that have been presented, and this is staff suggestions, what specific line items are we going to take money out of to do this $350,000? I think we can't vote on something we don't know
I read those out.
Can I make
I understand,
a comment?
Okay.
You read them out, but I didn't really actually look and see how that impacted these.
So this, I'd like to make a comment on this matter because this is not, I don't want this characterized as a staff recommendation. I know that Commissioner McKenzie was very concerned about this issue, and in our discussions about it, what I did was I reviewed the surplus recommendations and I identified several areas where I thought we could address what she was trying to achieve without severely impacting what we were doing with the surplus recommendations. And as she stated, those recommendations are as follows: reducing the materials budget by $150,000, still gives the materials budget a good boost but it is a reduction, reducing the AMH allocation by $150,000. So we think that we could still definitely get an AMH implementation in headquarters that might affect some of the things we want to do in branches to facilitate processing. And then also generally between training, consultation, and services recommendations, I'm suggesting that they each be reduced by $25,000 for a total of $50,000, and you, the commission, tell staff to figure that out. So those were recommendations that I made, and I did not discuss them with the staff. The staff spent a great deal of time coming up with this prioritized list, and the list here represents the staff recommendation.
So back to the motion on the floor.
May I ask a question?
Yes, Andy.
And I apologize, as a new commissioner, maybe I don't have the perspective on this, but what I believe I heard Barbara say is that we have lease agreements with most of the jurisdictions, and that for those jurisdictions with which we do have lease agreements, we enforce the provisions of the lease, which means that they are responsible for the significant capital expenses associated with the maintenance of the property. The purpose of this fund is to fill in at those jurisdictions where we do not have lease agreements. Am I understanding this correctly?
No. You are correct in the initial what you were saying. What happens to the library, I guess I might as well throw in an example. The HVAC compressor went out in Santa Rosa's Central Branch this summer. It was hotter than heck in there and very uncomfortable. So the library paid $45,000 or some amount for a compressor and another $45,000 for a crane to put the compressor on the roof. These kinds of major significant expenses are borne by the library out of its general fund. And the reason is because Santa Rosa does not have a lease. We don't have a lease with Santa Rosa for the facilities. So the library pays for all these expenditures. My conception would be...
Barbara, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I think I understand very clearly. We're filling in for those jurisdictions where we don't have leases, but we're supposed to have leases everywhere based on the JPA, are we not?
We are, and we're trying to do that, but we're not there yet. And so what I was talking about was putting some money aside to kind of even, we're talking about equity of service, and equity, to me, of responsibility. And so the jurisdictions that are responsible and are living up to the terms of their lease are in worse shape than the jurisdictions who don't have leases. And I wanted to put some money aside to, in some way, create a more equitable situation. So this wasn't to fill in for the cities that don't have leases, but it was to make some sort of an equity situation for the jurisdictions that do have leases.
But we spent, in the example you gave, we spent $90,000 at Santa Rosa. If we had had a lease agreement with Santa Rosa, they would have been responsible for that expenditure, would they not?
Would depend on what the lease said, but presumably, yes.
My concern is it feels like the incentives are out of line here. It feels like we're supposed to negotiate leases with every jurisdiction. But those jurisdictions that don't negotiate leases are in a more favorable financial position because we provide the money for expenses that they otherwise would have to bear. It feels like we're not creating incentives that are going to encourage those jurisdictions to come to the table in good faith and negotiate a lease. Now, as I say, I haven't been involved in any of these negotiations, but my concern is that the leverage is in the wrong direction.
Can I speak?
Jason?
Yes, Andy, in the future, we will and are looking at renegotiating leases for an equitable basis across all jurisdictions. So in my opinion, I agree with Chair Fox This is not the case, nor the opportunity to correct this disparity in lease agreements. These are one-time expenditures for one-time expenses. I agree with staff recommendations and feel the budgetary process, the annual budgetary process, is the proper place to look at lease agreements and funding lease agreements and funding maintenance. This is more for items that don't fall under that jurisdiction, and we have the opportunity to fund and improve library services above and beyond lease agreements.
Okay. So, Barbara?
Yeah, if I could just make one last pitch, is that this is one-time expenditure. The Measure Y funds say maintain the facilities. This is part of maintaining facilities. I understand. Anyway, and the other point I would make is that we can't continue to ignore the section in the JPA that says that we are supposed to work together with the jurisdictions to, let's see, the JPA states that the library and members who own library facilities shall work together to plan for the provision and payment of capital improvements and capital repairs to facilities operated by the library, including but not limited to major repair and replacement of building structures, HVAC systems, plumbing, roofing, ADA improvements, and other structural elements of external features such as parking lots. It says right in the JPA that we are supposed to be talking about this and working together. So I disagree, and if I don't have a second, I understand, but I do think that this is the only time and place, so we're going to have a surplus that is, who knows if we'll ever have again, if we're ever going to do anything to try to make an equity situation for the current situation that we're in, then this was my opportunity to do that. Thank you.
Okay, let me make one comment and then go to the public. Because I see hands popping up here and there.
We don't have a motion.
We have a motion on the floor.
Yeah, my motion is on the floor.
Yeah, but no, it's not. There's no second.
There's no second.
Okay.
Well, it's just,
No
we're
motion.
still discussion, and then if there's no second, then right, it goes.
And it doesn't open to
Go to
public
the public
discussion.
Until we've done first and second? Okay, thank you. I still am learning. But my thought is when you do a lease and when you drop a lease, that's working together. So, simple. Okay, so we had a couple of people raise their hands.
We have not resolved.
We still have to find a second.
Dies and there's no
Is
second.
There's no second.
there is a second? Is there a second?
No.
Okay, no second. Okay, motion's
Failed.
dies. All right. I'll get it right yet, you guys.
Have a motion for the proposal.
And can we
Okay.
move to approve the budget?
So now we need a motion to approve the budget as it stands.
I move to approve the budget as written.
Do I hear a second?
A second.
Okay, so Deborah Doyle created the motion and Paul seconded it. Okay, so we'll go, do we vote or do we go to the public first? Okay, I'm just
I don't think that
learning,
public
you
comment.
guys. Okay, public,
I don't know if it.
please up to the podiums at the
I don't
top.
think we allow for public comment.
2 minutes. And ask them to line
No,
up.
it's not. It's a
if they want
surplus
to
budget. It's
comment.
not.
Hello?
So that we don't have to wait for each one.
They're lining up.
Again, my name is Nancy Chimino. I've been with the library system 28 years. What Barbara addressed was, what did you call it, a windfall or surplus. So I'd like to say that the very first director I worked under, David Sabsai, he had a tight budget and a tight staff and always put money away every year. And we have been doing so even through the economic downtimes. We were always able to put money away. I call it the annual windfall. And so I just want to say that I disagree with that, is we've always managed to have more money at the end of the year because of the way we budget and because of our projections for property taxes And now we have the projections on Measure Y funds. We go low. So that's the first thing. The second thing I'd like to address is my criticism of the library has always been that we do not evaluate our services that we provide to the public when we introduce new technology. We don't know. Sometimes we do. There's a few managers that will do that, that will evaluate the services, but we often don't know how successful something is. The other thing I'd like to address is self-checkout. In my experience, having worked with the public here for 14 years, they want human contact. Some of the libraries that currently have now been self-checkout, Northwest is the best example. If you were to go in there, the patrons that use that library, they're hardly using the self-checkout. They love the staff there. The staff there is what draws them, the interaction. So I really think it is so important to evaluate all of this new technology. That's all I have to say. Thank you so much.
Okay. Oh, okay. You're so far away. My name is Kim Papanek, and I'm a children's librarian at Northwest Library. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I wanted to come at 6, but like many of my coworkers, I work till 6, so that didn't happen. I want to talk about Measure Y funds. Like a lot of my coworkers, I helped campaign for Measure Y and was glad that it passed. And I've heard a lot of talk about improving buildings and collections and technology, which is all good. We're all for that. But I just wanted to point out and remind you that we have a fabulous resource in Sonoma County Library, and that is the people who work in the libraries, the library staff, because the greatest buildings with the greatest books and all the technology and bells and whistles is not a library. It's the people who work there who make it so. Even our collections wouldn't be there without the hardworking collections services staff. All the computers in the library and all the great apps we offer would fail without the hardworking IT staff. All the buildings would fall apart without the hardworking facilities staff. In fact, none of us would get paid without the hardworking budget and finance and HR staff. And in the branches, all the great programs that we offer are offered by people. From the library aides, library specialists, library associates, librarians, branch managers. Those are the people who bring the library to life. And that is what attracts a lot of the people in Sonoma County to the library. They come for a lot of reasons, and I invite you to visit the branches. I encourage you to visit the branch that you're responsible for, and also branches you're not. I encourage you to visit all the library branches and see the breadth and diversity and how fabulous each library is and how it's addressing the needs of its community. And if you're struggling for ways to spend the Measure Y money, I encourage you to talk to line staff, the people who work with the public every day, and ask them what they need from you, because you are our caretakers. You're our boss. Ask the staff in the library what they need to support the mission of the library. And I encourage you to talk to the public and ask them, the people in the library, what's missing? What do they need? What do they want that they're not finding? And I think you'll get a lot of good answers there. And I'm going to put in a plug. I think if you ask the public what they think, one of the things you're going to hear everywhere is that they love the people who work there. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Any other public comments?
Question? I call for the question.
Question?
A vote.
A vote, okay.
That's saying, that's
okay.
saying I call for.
Oh,
And they have to be
one more.
on the motion. They have to talk about what the motion is, not general.
Well, she was talking about surplus. So. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Rosalie Abbott. I'm the Teen Services Librarian at the Sebastopol Library. And I noticed that when Commissioner Zollman gave his list of suggestions, that a lot of the staff actually clapped. And I would just like to echo the items that you suggested are worthy of discussion. Thank you.
Okay. So we're ready for a vote?
Yes.
All righty. We'll start with Andy. Motion on the floor to pass this surplus budget as it stands.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Randall? Aye. Stephen?
Nay, for the reasons stated previously.
Okay. Tom?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Barbara?
Yes.
Reese is a yes. Okay, that was passed. 10 of us? No. 9 of us with one abstention. No, 8 of us with one abstention, with one no.
Correct.
I think that's right. And Stephen was the no. Got that, Jane? Good. Okay. Next item on our agenda is amendment for the interim director's contract. Susan was hired. Oh, God. Got to move over. Yeah. Hi, Paul.
Just don't get too close there.
Yeah, really. Susan was hired, and she did not get the pay rate that she originally requested because our top notch on the salary for an interim director or for a director was a certain amount. And it turned out she was being paid $88, I think that's around there, an hour. Since then, we have increased the salary for the director, the library director, and she is requesting a raise in pay. And, well, any comments?
Can I make the motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the proposal.
Okay.
I second.
Okay, so Tom Hauser made the motion. Randall was the second.
Discussion.
And so we're open for discussion. Barbara.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment. It's probably obvious, but there's no benefits at all with the interim library director's position. That's a significant cost savings also. So I'm supportive of this motion.
Move to call the question.
Pardon?
Call the question, yeah.
Oh, he's
Move to call the question.
Okay, so that means we vote. Okay, Andy. Yay?
Aye.
Aye. Randall.
Aye.
Stephen.
Aye.
Tom.
Aye.
Paul.
Aye.
Aye.
Jason.
Aye.
Barbara.
Aye.
And Reese is the aye, so that was unanimously passed. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You deserve it.
You deserve it.
Just don't take any more time.
Can I just make a point of order? This is not, I don't have a comment, but you didn't ask for public comment.
Okay, thank you. Jump up and down and wave your arms. Okay, so we're moving to action items by resolution. The first resolution relates to the CUP-CCA Act, which is a California Uniform Public Construction Cost Accounting Act. And I guess Anne's going to speak to it initially.
Yes, thank you very much. I was remiss in not introducing myself to the commission before because I haven't met several of the commission members, but my name is Ann Keck. I was appointed as a general counsel for the library this July, so I am just learning the ropes along with some of our new commission members. But one of the first things to come across my desk, as you know before, was the Petaluma Refresh project, and as we were looking at other projects coming along the way, it became clear that the library was was, shall we say, a little behind the ball when it came to taking advantage of some state laws that would allow the library to save monies in some refresh projects and to dispense with the competitive bidding process required under California Public Contract Code. So the Uniform Public Construction Cost Accounting Act, or UPCA, is a statutory scheme enabling the library to utilize its own resources and also go to informal contracts for projects that are small. Right now, the law only allows the library to perform contracts under $6,500, but if we go and opt into UPCA, that amount increases to $45,000 for things that library staff can do, and as of January 1 next year, the amount increases to $60,000. It also sets an interim amount where you can do an informal bidding process rather than a formal competitive bidding process, up to what is currently $175,000 right now and will increase on January 1 to $200,000. Part of UPCA also requires the board, any board or commission or governing entity to go and pass a resolution regarding a procedure for such informal bidding. And then everything over that amount would have to go for a formal competitive bid for construction projects. So we believe that that provides the library with a lot of resource allocation choices that it can have with respect to its upcoming construction projects, and the staff and legal counsel is recommending the commission move forward with them. In doing that, there's only two things that we have to do up front. First is to basically pass a resolution saying, yes, the library wants to opt in to the UPCA scheme. And the second is this very short resolution establishing the policies and procedures for that informal competitive bidding amount. That is the construction projects that are currently between $45,000 and $175,000. And that's why your commission has two resolutions in front of you rather than just one, because they have to be taken under separate actions, but they work together. So with that being said, are there any questions that any of you have for me?
Tom?
If I may, I'll make a motion.
All right.
My understanding is there isn't a downside to this. We don't have to use it, but we can use it. So I move that the Sonoma County Library Commission adopt the following resolutions. 1, electing to become subject to the procedures set forth in the Uniform Public Construction Cost Accounting Act, Public Contract Code Section 22,000 et sequence, the Act, and 2, establishing informal bidding procedures pursuant to the Act's requirements.
I'll second that.
Okay. I should read the resolution at this point in time, correct?
And open for public comment.
Oh, public comment. Sorry. Someday.
Do you have to read the resolution? Why do you have to read the resolution?
I thought you had to read it into the record.
Piece of paper.
No? All righty. Okay, so I'm assuming we don't have to. Let's do the first resolution first, saying that the library will...
One motion.
One motion for both.
One vote for everything.
One vote for everything? All right. Okay, I thought we had to pass them separately.
Well, they're two separate resolutions. The agenda item combines them together. So actually, since that it was moved to approve both of them, you may approve both of them at the same time.
Okay.
But they are separate resolutions, and that is what you're approving.
Okay, so a motion has been put forth by Tom, and is there a second? Barbara seconded. Okay, so we will start out. Andy?
Aye.
Aye?
Yeah, he said
Yes.
All righty. Randall? Aye. Stephen?
Aye, and I think we're supposed to ask for public comment, but aye.
We did.
We did.
Tom, yes.
Okay, I was...
Paul, yes.
Paul, yes. Okay. Deborah?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Barbara?
Yes.
Reese, yes. So it was unanimously passed. They both were.
Thank you for your time.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
This is where this comes into play.
Here we have a couple of things together.
Please use a microphone.
Okay. So how can I see it? Use the microphone at the same time.
Just want to make sure we do item 9.2, the resolution for the Friends,
Yeah.
before you move into your discussion.
Oh, I missed
Yeah.
it. They said 2 resolutions.
No, no
I'm sorry.
problem.
That
Right.
I apologize.
The separate item.
Okay, yes, I see that. Thank you. I knew that, but I missed it. Okay. We are at 9.2, resolution honoring the Friends and Sonoma County Libraries for Friends, Library Week. Susan, do you want to speak to it?
Absolutely. So the United for Libraries is a division of the American Library Association that supports and has supported for many years the National Friends of Libraries Week. And we're bringing this to your attention because we may have celebrated it in the past, but not in the recent past. And I wanted to thank one of our new staff members, Lana Adlawan, for bringing it to our attention to pass such a resolution. So we have a resolution before you honoring all the Friends of the Sonoma County Libraries during Friends of the Libraries Week. So we did let them know this action was going to be on the agenda. If you pass the resolution, we'll send nice copies to all the Friends groups, and hopefully next year we'll anticipate a little earlier and have a little bit of more fanfare. But we're recommending to you that you approve this resolution to honor our Friends groups.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Okay. Can I read that? I think it's important.
Yes.
Okay. I move that the Sonoma County Library Commission approve a resolution celebrating and appreciating the support, dedication, and long-term advocacy of the Friends of the Cloverdale, Hillsburg, Petaluma, Roanoke Park, Cotati, Santa Rosa Libraries, Sebastopol, Sonoma Valley, Sonoma County Wine Library, Windsor, and the River Friends of the Library.
I still second.
Still second. Okay. We're going to go in a different order this time. Deborah.
Yes, but let me say, as the president of the California Public Library Advocates, which is the organization for commissioners, trustees, friends, etc., I salute you and think this is fabulous.
I did forget public comment again, didn't I, Tom? Did anybody want to say anything? Okay, it seems we have somebody coming to the counter. I apologize, everybody.
Thank you. I'm Sarah Swearingen, president of the Friends of the Santa Rosa Library. So we're very proud to claim 5 libraries that we support. And I've very much appreciated tonight hearing the Friends mentioned several times in the course of your discussions as partners in building and working with supporting our libraries. And it does mean a lot to all of us to have this resolution and to have your support as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments?
So I said yes.
Said yes. Jason?
Aye.
Barbara?
Barbara says yes, and as actually a lifetime member of the Friends of the Roanoke Park Cotati Library and a longtime board member, and I think the Friends of the Library are absolutely fabulous, and thank you everybody who participates, and yes.
All righty. Andy?
Yes.
All righty. Randall?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes, big shout out to the Friends of the Basketball Library and also to the Friends of the River Library.
Tom?
Yes.
Paul says yes.
All righty, and I say yes. And I thank the Friends for all the work they've done over all these years that I've been around in libraries and in and out of libraries. So fabulous groups of people. Thank you. Okay. Moving on to the one I started to talk about earlier. Okay, goals and priorities. I think the first thing that commissioners need to know and remember is that We are the governing entity for the whole system. We are appointed by individual JPAs, but we are appointed entities for the whole system. And we need to keep that in mind as we do our due diligence, as we make these decisions up here, and as we sit. Committees are portions of the commission, people who, you know, create the committee, and take a breath, Reese. And they explore in depth the different issues that come to their committee. As they do that, they make recommendations to this commission. But it is incumbent of the commission to make the final decision. It is the incumbent of the commissioner to do some homework and learn about some of those recommendations and what's behind them, at least to some degree. And so those are something we need to think about as we go about setting our goals and our priorities for the next year. We have a list in here that we did back in June of 2017, I believe it was, at one of our retreat workshops. And in actuality, we've completed a good portion of it. We did a very good job, I think. We've got our OPEB in place. We've expanded the staff. We're working on hiring the director. We've got a good interim director now who's really, really helping us with that. We've learned more about our roles and responsibility and the duties of how we do things, except I'm not very good at running meetings right now. But in any case, I think we're making progress. And what I see in the last few months is a gigantic leap forward. So what I would like everybody to do over the next couple months, because it's not going to be until right after the first of the year that we have our retreat where we actually set our goals and priorities, I would like you to think about what, as a commission, now these are not goals and priorities for the libraries, but what, as a commission, you would like to see us accomplish in the next 6 months, year, 2 years. Okay? So, any thoughts, comments, or anything on that topic? Tom.
I will comment for the new members. I was here for this. I've been here for 2 years. I was here for this. And what Reese said, that we have actually, it's kind of boring. It was a whole Saturday we lost and things like that. But we actually have done a lot of these things. We understand. We haven't done a lot of them too. And maybe we never will do them all. But it was a good guidance thing, and it's important. So read it over, think about it, and look forward to when we can do this again and set our things. I want to say at the bottom of page 121, it says priorities, OPEB, CalBERS, expansion of staff, hiring director, continued process. We've done pretty well at those priorities that we set. It's kind of amazing. Too many of us.
Yeah, I think we need to give ourselves a clap on the back for some of the stuff we have done, despite all the things that have been happening around us. So, anyway, and we're learning. And Deborah.
So just a clarification, these priorities are the commission's priorities. We're supposed to be reading in terms of the commission priorities. I think that's great. I also think that for an organization like this, if we don't have, if we're not sensitive to the needs of the staff and fold that in somehow, then I'm not sure how we have a real clear understanding of the priorities of the commission. So I look forward to learning from the folks who have been on the commission for a while to see how we actually do that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think if you look at some of those things, OPEB and CalPERS definitely did not come from us. It came from input with staff and the issues that were happening and occurring within the administration of trying to get this done. Yeah. So we do have a crossing with the staff in this process.
That's not what it said.
Yeah. Yeah, it's important because we can't do it all ourselves, but at the same time, we need to know what we need to focus on. And I think there's some good things that we need to do that we haven't been paying attention to because we've just been trying to survive. So, but think about things as you go and as you see what we're doing and as you learn and as you hear information from the staff, think about the things that we need to focus on. What do we need to do, et cetera. Okay. Yes.
I had a comment.
Yes.
When you want us to put our list together, is this in anticipation of a meeting next?
No. It'd be in January probably that we will be doing it. So kind of think about it between now and then. Then we're going to have a discussion, and it'll be a lengthy discussion about what you think it's important for the commission to focus on over the next, and I realize there'll only be 6 months left before we do some changing, but we have 2 years with this commission. It'll be another year and a half beyond with all these people in place. And what do we want to focus on? What do we want to look at?
And when will this discussion occur?
January.
Okay.
Right after the first of the year.
Perfect.
But Barbara and I were talking about it, and we wanted to give you guys heads up, and especially the new people that are on, so they can begin thinking about it and paying attention, because as you learn, you begin to see things and you think, oh, yes, that's important. Well, that's important, but this is more important, and it kind of becomes a process. And so I'm hoping. And Susan passed out a copy of the strategic plan with the goals and priorities and objectives that the library had developed 2 years ago? So 3 years ago.
It's 2015 to 2020.
And we need to begin kind of on a different level, think about it for the library. Now, typically speaking, if I am correct, the library director and staff begins to put this together, but we have an important input into this. So, as do the community and all the other stakeholders. Very important and really kind of a fun process to watch. So, anyway, so that might help you in some of your thinking. But what do we as commissioners, I mean, how do we reach out? What do we need to do to make people realize, like Deborah was saying earlier, that we are important and we do things, and we do marvelous and incredible things out there in the community? How do we get people out there and the electeds, et cetera, the stakeholders, to know that this is what we're doing and that we are truly having an impact? And that's one of the things that we need to focus on and think about. How can we do that? What do we need to do? What do we need to do as individual commissioners? What do we need to do as group? So that's kind of where we're going with that this year. So then the second piece, yes.
I'd just make a quick comment. And I appreciate your definitive focus on January, but I just want to comment that I think when you have the goal-setting session, I would be happy to be part of that, but I also think it would be great to have your new director participating in that, and we have an aggressive, positive timeline for this recruitment, but I would just suggest that maybe those dates are a bit flexible, because it would be great to have the new director on board when you're having that session.
Well, that's one of the reasons why we were saying January. I guess I should.
We're hoping January. I would think early in the 2019. Yes. We're going to have someone here to do that.
Okay. So, does that sort of get everybody thinking, I hope? Okay, 10.1.2, California sales tax information. Susan and I worked on this, and we put this together. And what it is it tells how libraries are organized. In other words, what's the difference between a county library, a city library, an independent special district library, and a JPA? And how do we all cross over? And how are each of these entities funded? And they're all funded differently. Some have dedicated property taxes, such as we do. We have that, and we're very fortunate to have that, because if you didn't have that in place prior to the 78 Prop 13, you were out of luck. You had to go someplace else to do it. So what you did oftentimes is put a parcel tax in place. 23 of the 45 county libraries are primarily funded by a property tax. The other 22 have to go elsewhere. Now, one of the things, 120 of the 183 California library systems are city libraries. 45 of them are county libraries. I can't remember how many independent jurisdictions there are.
About 15 or so between
15?
districts and JPAs.
Okay, but there are 6 JPAs. Now we get kind of weird here because one JPA is, the oversight is the city, or the cities involved. That's Belvedere and Tiburon. The other 4 JPAs, Sacramento, Santa Clara, Santa Cruz, and San Mateo, oversight is the county. We have no oversight. We are an independent special district. We stand alone. The county does not tell us what to do nor tell us how to spend our money. The cities, none of the cities have that input either. So it's a very unique, I mean, we are one of 183 libraries in this position. So it sets us in a rather unique, could be scary place. I mean, we're dealing with $30 million and it's just us sitting here at this dais that's doing it. So it's a very unusual place and a very, we have a lot of responsibility in that process. So we need to, think about things that we do and how we can do it. As it says here, 60% of our budget is property taxes and about 40% are sales taxes. The property tax is the largest paid tax in California. It outstrips even the personal taxes now. And 4,000 governmental entities and agencies receive money from the property tax. And we are one of those 4,000 as a special district. So again, we are a unique, unusual place in the system. Sales tax, kind of, sort of the same thing. We've managed to pass the sales tax. It's what, 1 cent for every $8 you pay in sales tax comes to us. Not a lot of money, but when you think that we get $12 million from that 1 cent for every $8, I mean, that's a lot of money. And it's a lot of pennies. When I got to thinking about the number of pennies involved, I mean, I was just thinking, my God, okay. So that's something else. Back to the property tax. When property taxes were passed, we were at 22.5 cents per $1,000. So for every $1,000 on a piece of property, we got 22.5 cents. Not much money, but again, it adds up to $18 million a year. Again, a lot of money. And that changes, and there's the cap on it at 1%, but that increases 2% each year, so it increases the property tax, but can't be reassessed until the property is sold. And some of you know this stuff, but it helps to understand what's happening and how people feel about it. In the days, in the 70s, when the property tax, Prop 13, was passed, a house for the median house was $23,000. Today, that's worth $88,000. So the money has changed in value. That same house would be worth $88,000 today. And the money, which means we're getting 22.5 cents in 1978 terms, and that would be 86 cents today. So somehow we needed to make that gap up as we went along in our budget. And it carried pretty well for a while, but still lacking. And that's where our sales tax came in. It filled that hole, and it filled it almost exactly. It put us into the median for per capita that we can spend on the libraries. We are right in the middle. We're not the 130, oh, there's one that's 345, but I don't even count that one. But we're not at 130 or 120 like San Francisco, but we're also not down at $6 like a couple of the counties. So this is just some of the stuff that's in here, may be boring. If you want to get into it even to a greater depth, you can go to the 3 resources here. And a lot of this, frankly, is plagiarized out of the 3 resources, but it's important information that you need to know as you go through to see how we fit in all of this system, in all of the California libraries, and our unusual place in the world. So, anyway, happy reading.
In other words, we're a lone wolf.
Yes, we are. We really are a lone wolf in many ways. So, any comments? Barbara?
I just wanted to say that, kind of stepping back, tonight was going to be a workshop because we had changed the September meeting because of my being out of town. And so we thought, well, this meeting is only 2 weeks after the other meeting, so we'll have a workshop and we'll talk about some of these things in depth. Then, as always happens, when you have a vacuum, the whole agenda filled up with all these other important things we talked about. So I want to thank Reese and our interim director, Susan Hildreth, for all the work on this. This is a really important thing to know and to understand. And I'm looking forward to reading it. We just received it tonight, so I'm looking forward to reading it and digesting it, and hopefully we can have some more discussion about it at our workshop in the beginning of the year. But it is important to understand how different we are and where our money comes from. So thank you very much for your work on this.
Any comments or questions off the top of your head that you might have?
I'm scared now. You made me scared.
I just like statistics and stuff.
Yeah, oh boy.
Okay, so with that, we'll move on. Agenda items for future commission meetings. Anybody have any suggestions? Tom?
Sometime the bylaws, JPA lease committee is going to have a report, and I think the first thing we're going to have is going to be about draft for discussion of an outline of what leases should look like. That's our goal, to get something together for that soon.
Okay. Stephen, I thought your hand was up.
Yes, renewed request for status of where we are with the Roseland branch, because the next time we're meeting is November 1st, which is December, January, February, exactly 3 months from when they need to be out of the current space. Thanks.
Okay. Deborah.
I'd like to hear from, say, the staff that go to the CLA conference to see what they learn, and you may have a couple of commissioners who are also going, so it would be great to, I think, have a report from CLA, which is in early November, but...
Okay. Anything else? All right. And with that, we go into the closed session, and we will see you, I have been told, about 45 minutes to an hour. So if anybody wants to hang around to see us smile when all this is done, we'll see you, and if not, go have a nice evening.
It's the early registration.
Okay.
So I get off the next.
Okay.
All right, so we have returned from our closed session, and there was no reportable action. So we will move on to date and time of the next meeting. Monday the 5th, 6:30, not 6 this time, 6:30. And we will see you, and so I proclaim this meeting adjourned.